Good morning, Leadwerks engineers. Today we have another exciting episode of Weekend Workshop where we continue discussion of the ongoing development of Leadwerks 5. It's approaching pretty soon, 6 years in the making. Um, Coming out this summer, certainly. Probably sooner rather than later. And so last week I had another email exchange with Valve and went back and forth with them a bit. I think this might actually work out. I think this might actually work out. So we've had some problems since we released Ultra Engine in early access on a new app ID, which I very intelligently only left up for the minimum amount of 2 weeks before it was released. So it got a very low number of thank you. It got a very low number of wish list ads, which is one of the important metrics that the Steam algorithm uses to decide what products are shown to Steam users. Uh, Valve has told me that my best course of action is probably to just make the engine a free upgrade to Leadworks on the old app ID, which is considered to be good by the Steam algorithm. There's an axiom in business that it's easier to get money out of your existing customers than it is to get new customers, but the opposite is appears to actually be true on Steam. It's easier to get new customers than it is to move everybody to a new app ID. Um, yeah, of course, DLCs are a different matter, but that's something else. So, according to the best numbers I have, if what Valve is telling me is true, then I just plug some simple numbers into a simple equation that's probably not accounting for all the other, it's not accounting for a lot of other things that potentially could make it higher. But if I just plug those numbers in, my very simple equation based on what they're telling me gives me projected first year sales of $289,000, which is pretty good. Um, so if that
Nice.
if we do see something like that, then um, of course, right now it's like very scary to me because I kind of don't see how that can happen, but at the same time, like knowing how I've seen weirder things happen on Steam. So I don't know, guys. Like based on what they're telling me, like this might actually work out, and it might be really good. Which would mean that Leadworks 5 is a success. It means we have a new development platform that's much more robust and stable and capable of what I initially created back in the day. Um, and it means we have Leadworks will have a very good future to so that I can deliver the things that you need, and I have a much better idea now of what you actually need. Um, let's see, what order do I want to do this in? So in future development, I think one of the major besides new game templates we know is important. Bug fixes, of course, is important. New features, that's all important. But one of the major things I think I want to do is now that I know what the engine is for and how it's being used, I think eliminating any of the excess internal complexity that it has is a high priority. Because this engine was actually built for. I mean, it was built for both games, but it was also built with like two scale space combat simulations in mind to run World War III simulations with, like encompassing like Mars and the Moon and uh, the Earth with millimeter precision, as well as mining of asteroid mining and extraction of water on the moon. From there's ice in the Shackleton crater. Um, I mean, so it was like some of the things in there. Like I'm not joking about this. Like some of the things in there are a little bit. overkill for what we actually need. And that comes at a cost. Um, my the things that I really valued during development were scalability and performance. And the things I value more now, I think, are going to be uh, improved hardware compatibility and driver compatibility. So, like for example, I think I would like to convert the clustered forward plus renderer that I implemented, which is similar to what id Software does with their Doom games and probably other stuff. Um, I think I would like to convert that into a deferred renderer. I think the clustered forward renderer is faster in some situations. I think the deferred renderer is faster in other situations, but the deferred renderer is always simpler. To the shader code is always a lot simpler, and that alone is a good reason to do that. There's other things like there's some driver bugs that on there's a driver bug right now, something I can't do with like the wind vertex animation uh, feature. I couldn't release that because there's a driver bug on NVIDIA cards where the early Z pass and the normal and the final pass, the depth values don't match, even though the same exact code is being executed, and it works perfectly on AMD cards. Um, that early Z pass is required in a clustered forward renderer. It's not in a deferred renderer, so I could just totally sidestep that in a deferred renderer. Again, deferred is just simpler. Um, I would like to eliminate the culling thread. Right now, it does. There's like a round trip that data goes through the culling thread and back to the rendering thread, and it completely eliminates the cost of culling. But and we were talking about doing like a compute shader culling system, which that's very complex and that's very hard to debug. And I was like, one thing I've learned is that sometimes very super optimized C++ code can be about as fast as if it's running on a GPU. Like if C++ is just doing math operations, it runs unbelievably fast. Its allocation of values on the stack and memory allocation, those steps take a long time. So if you're like returning variables and like, then that can take a very long time. But if you're just performing math operations, it goes unbelievably fast. So like I just did something. I tested a loop of 100,000 axis aligned bounding box intersection tests, and just that simple test, it took like between 0 to 1 milliseconds to perform that task. So I actually think I could probably write very, very optimized culling code that would construct the visibility set, and I think it could run in like between 0 to 3 milliseconds, and that would be balanced out. That would be running at the same time as the GPU is running, so they would the renderer would not get slower unless the GPU was running faster than that. So now we're talking about, so it would only like really affect it if it was running at like, faster than 300 frames per second. So is that really something we need to worry about so much? For practical reasons, probably not. Would that help with reliability? Would it help with like, GPU resource cleanup? Would it make it simpler? Yeah, it would make it a lot simpler. Would we have fewer bug reports in the future to deal with? Yeah, would it allow me to do more things more easily without fear of causing problems? Yeah, it would. So I think that's kind of the approach I want to take in the future. I would like to eliminate all bindless textures, all use of bindless textures. When I first started using these, it was like, wow, this is like how textures should have always been. Why wasn't it always done this way from the start? However, in the last year, we've seen on both NVIDIA and AMD cards, um, we've seen some pretty bad driver bugs related to these. On NVIDIA, there was a very bad memory leak when bindless textures were in use. On AMD cards, the program would just crash, and these were things that were introduced. It wasn't like the program was working, and then they put out a driver update, and the program and then it stopped working. Um, and both of these issues have been resolved since then. Um, this may be causing, I'm not sure yet, but this might be the reason why the engine doesn't run on Intel integrated graphics, which isn't a huge priority right now, but still, like, that might be the reason. I'm not sure yet, but anyways, uh, if I'm the only person in the world using bindless textures, maybe it's best to just not use them. If it means there's it's less likely that in the future that we might get a bad driver like that, because I don't want to go through that again. Um, I'd like to replace the scene tree with just a 2D a system of 2D tiles. Like, basically you take an STL map where the key is an iVec2, which is like a vec2 value using integers, and so that just gives you the offset for that tile. And then each tile just has an STL vector that contains all the entities that live in that, like, vertical column. And of course, entities can cross boundaries, so they could exist in two columns or more. Um, and so you insert them into both of those lists. Now, the problem is if you have a very, very large object, something like those big giant spaceships in Star Wars, the Star Destroyers. If you had something that big, it would insert itself into an enormous number of these tiles, which are like a fixed size, and that would be extremely, extremely inefficient. The way you deal with that is, well, in practical reality, like, if you have a very, very large object, you probably don't have a lot of them. So if, like, one of the dimensions of an object's bounding box is greater than, say, like, twice the size of one of these tiles that are maybe like 16 by 16 or 32 by 32 meters. If something is bigger than that, just put it into a global list of objects and just iterate through that global list of objects, because it's very unlikely that you're going to have a large number of very large objects. And since I'm not trying to build, a space combat simulator to win World War III, which honestly we saw that coming, years and years ago, then it's okay to make decisions like that. Yeah, so as far as the NASA stuff goes, I mean, we were doing quite well with, we were making a lot of money, and it was based on personal sales, even though we weren't trying. Just like we were on base at one of the NASA bases, people thought we were cool. They wanted to do business with us. They knew that I was successful outside of aerospace, and that, if you're successful, people often want to do business with you because they are hoping that your success will rub off on them. So, like, it was mostly just came down to personal sales. Unfortunately, Northrop Grumman sold off the division or something that we were a small part of, even though we were bringing in a lot of money, and we kind of lost access to the customers, which was government, and from that point on, we could never make money. So I've completely dropped the aerospace stuff. We looked into, like, like research and development funds internally within the company, but that's completely different because now it's like you're begging for money and they just see it as a waste. So that didn't work out, unfortunately. So I'm just focusing on, what Leadwerks is, which is, it's the easy to use game engine that scales as you grow. Like, you can start from zero knowledge, and it will teach you everything you need to know one step at a time. But you don't have to. It's not one of these very limited systems where you have to throw away everything you learn and then start over. It really can be the last game engine you ever have to learn, because it does scale to do the things that you want to do. I also want to make sure that we limit the scope of what Leadwerks is supposed to be. And one of those things is like, I'm not really interested in like streaming worlds, endless streaming worlds, because when you add stuff like that, it really changes the user experience. It becomes much more difficult to have like a good, simple, easy to use experience. The way you do things has to change a lot. There's a lot of technical problems with it. I mean, this is the reason that Unreal Engine has such a problem with stuttering, and very few people actually even need it. And those people that do need it probably have unrealistic ideas about their own capabilities of using it effectively. I mean, if you're a new developer or a small developer, or not already, not part of a 50-person team that's already got $100 million in funding, you probably aren't going to be able to make a big streaming RPG. Probably not. And so it's like, do I want to damage the entire, all that complexity comes at a cost of stability, and, that's all effort that I could be putting somewhere else. So do I want to damage the user experience for 99% of the people so that 1% of people who probably don't have realistic expectations, so they can try to use it and not be able to, really be able to use it effectively? That's probably not something I want to do. So it's actually like, deciding what the limits of what Leadwerks should be is a really good thing, because when you limit your scope, when you stop going so broadly, it allows you to go deeper into more detail and deliver a better experience for what you're actually trying to do. For example, like the SCP game I'm developing, I'm not going to have guns in that game. It has a very limited scope, and as a result, it's like I'm going into a lot more depth with what I want, how I want it to work, and it's a really fun process. Anyways, so the Leadwerks 5 release, as I said, it's probably looks like it's going to be, I'm planning to put it on the Leadwerks 4 app ID, so it's just going to be a free update. Right now, I'm kind of taking it easy because I still have some decisions I need to make, and I need to make good decisions. Most important is like, when exactly is the right time to release? We're pretty much ready right now. There's always more stuff I could do. I have a few things I'm still gonna. There's a couple of bugs I want to fix, and I'm on the fence about whether I'm gonna do the marble game sample right now, or maybe people will just be okay with just learning the editor for the first month, because obviously it's better to get it out as soon as possible, because every moment that it's not out, that's money that I'm losing. So when exactly is the right time to release? It's going to be a judgment call, and it has to be balanced versus like what I want the user experience to be good, but I also want to get it out as soon as possible. I've never seen a product launch with 0 bugs. I don't think that has ever happened in history. So that's not something I'm going to attempt to do. So it's really just a balancing act, and I want to have like a clear head and make good decisions. So I'm not pushing myself very hard right now. So in retrospect, like, what was really needed of all the things I researched, like for Leadwerks 5, what was really needed? The good things that were really, really beneficial was shared pointers for everything in the C++ API, and also in the Lua. The Lua API benefits from that, of course, because it doesn't have to manually delete anything. Using the Sol Lua binding library was really good. Like our Lua API is really, really nice right now. It's really good to use. Having the homegrown GUI toolkit was one of the best decisions I made. Just taking the bull by the horns and getting rid of all these third-party GUI toolkits that never work right. Implementing my own. The interface in our editor is so good. It looks great. It works great. We have very, very few bugs with that. Um, and it's been like so solid and reliable compared to anything I've used in the past. So what you might know as Ultra App Kit, it's that turned out really, really awesome. The material painting is really great. The tessellation features are really great. Arguably, I probably could have held off on those. They probably were not needed to get to this point, and we could probably have been to this point like 3 months ago otherwise, but that's okay. The downloads manager system, finally, we have something that works right. It's curated. The content is good. There's plenty of good content, so that has worked out really well. Some of the multi-threading has been very good. I think some of it was unnecessary. If I had to do it again, I would probably design Leadwerks with 3 threads, with just using 3 threads. One for um, one for rendering, one for updating the navigation mesh dynamically, and then one for everything else. That's probably how I would have done it. Because, I mean, again, like, yeah, having physics on another thread, that makes it faster, but that also comes at a cost. And people always say they want faster performance, but then, okay, it's like, well, what are you willing to give up to achieve that? The answer is usually nothing. Um, Things that I think were a waste of time, most of all, was Vulkan. So this was a 6-year development process, and Vulkan probably wasted about 3 years. Um, so that Vulkan was an absolute disaster. And I think it was intentionally designed to be bad, or at least there was no incentive for it to be good. Um, and a lot of people in the industry are coming to the same conclusion as me. By the way, a lot of people agree with me, but they don't say so. A lot of people who are pretty big in the industry agree with me. Uh, let's see. Most of the graphical techniques I attempted were a waste of time that I researched. Because in the end, we're coming up with what we're coming out with is well, Leadwerks, but just a better version of that. So the shadow, I spent some time, a few weeks, investigating shadow filtering techniques like variance shadow maps, exponential shadow maps, that kind of stuff. And it's all a waste of time. Um, First of all of those techniques have artifacts that you can never overcome. You can add hacks to them that will try to overcome those artifacts, and then when you do in that process, you will be getting rid of the advantages they have, like the beautiful edges that variance shadow maps gives you. Um, And then also, all of those techniques can never be as good as just simple, what is it, PCM shadow filtering. So if you do a shadow lookup on a normal shadow map, if you have linear sampling enabled, then it'll do like a 2x2 sampling for you. So the hardware basically gives you four samples for the price of one. All the other techniques, they require sort of a pre-process pass of a very large texture. And so that's like doing a relatively expensive full screen post-processing effect on like a 4K screen for each point light. It's something like that. So that cost alone makes them useless, and then plus the fact that they just don't work. So all those alternative shadow filtering techniques like variance, exponential, etc., they're all garbage. Don't even bother. I spent a lot of time trying to implement a voxel GI system because I saw a demo that was very cool, and it seemed to work okay. In the end, like what I came up with was unreleasable, and Epic has the best implementation of that, and theirs is still really janky. It doesn't. You have to like really tune it. You have to spend a lot of time. It doesn't just work. Like you have to spend a lot of time trying to get it to work, and the results just aren't very good. So I think that whole technique is just fundamentally flawed. Programmers look at it and they're like, "Oh, this is like Legos," but uh, everyone figures out that it's not really a good idea. And then finally, like the internal complexity, some of the internal complexity I implemented was excessive because I wasn't designing for what it turned out we really needed. And so elimination of some of that internal complexity in favor of improved hardware compatibility and improved driver compatibility, so we're less likely to see driver bugs in the future. And just reduced complexity means that I can put more effort into doing things that are more productive. That's definitely a good thing. And then finally, I overestimated the importance of performance. Of course, it's nice to have good performance, but I don't really, based on what I've seen, I don't think it's really something. I don't think it's something that even factors into developers' decision making process in the slightest bit. I don't think they ever get to the point where they're actually like running tests side by side to see which one is faster. I think it's probably the least important thing that developers prioritize. Players may care, but developers just really don't. Um, and you can tell this like uh, by saying like, okay, well, who wants faster performance? Everybody. Okay, what are you willing to give up to achieve that? Nothing. That's usually like how it goes. So, um, yeah, I'd say performance is no longer our number one consideration. And if we see in some of these like extreme stress tests, if we see lower performance in some cases, in favor of reduced complexity, in favor of better compatibility with different hardware, in favor of uh, improved reliability in the future, I'd be okay with that. Um, yeah, once I implement those things, we might actually be able to get it. It might actually run on a modern Mac after that. Because Mac still, to my surprise, I found out Mac still supports OpenGL. They don't like to talk about it, but it's still OpenGL still works on like 4.3 still works on a MacBook that you buy today. Um, so that's kind of the things I've learned. I mean, yeah, I'd say like overall like Vulkan was the thing that really made the development process slow. That was really the major problem. Everything else was I think was pretty understandable. And I don't beat myself up about those. I made some mistakes, but I don't beat myself up about those. It's just Vulkan was the thing that really almost killed us. Um, so again, like what is important. You know, this is the easy to learn game engine that scales as you grow up to a certain point. If you're a 50-person team with a huge amount of funding, Leadwerks might not be the right game engine for you. If you're making something, if you're a small team or solo developer, then Leadwerks is the right game engine for you. And I'm going to continue in that direction. Um, that's what I want Leadwerks to be. So to say what it is, a thing is, you have to say what it is not. And going forward, like, now I feel like great clarity about, our purpose. And it does look like our future on Steam, it actually, like, from what Valve is telling me, it does look like things are going to be pretty good. Um, um, when you start a project like this, you have to be very open-minded and like consider every possibility. When you need to whittle that down. You cannot maintain that attitude, or nothing will ever get done. Um, so now that I know what I'm doing and why I'm doing it and who I'm doing it for, I think some of my own habits and behaviors I want to change. Um, Recently, I'm becoming just kind of more aware of. Okay, so like this morning, I went on Discord, and it's the Steam Summer Sale right now. By the way, go to Steam and look for Leadwerks or Ultra Engine on on Steam. By the way, if you have Ultra Engine, I've said this multiple times, but if you have Ultra Engine, you'll get Leadwerks 5 for free, so don't worry about that. Um, so we have an increased amount of activity on Discord, and not as big as we're going to see, but just a small increase. And I went on. Okay, so like yesterday, I just did a couple of things, and in the morning, and then I said, okay, I'm not going to look at a screen for the rest of the day. And I turned off my computer, and I didn't turn it back on until this morning. And I went for a walk, and I went for a swim, and I sat and I listened to the entire album, "The Joshua Tree" by YouTube, on an actual CD player with a CD. I just sat there and listened to it, and it was such a different experience when you have like a mechanical device and you have an actual disc. Like all the data is right there, and there's nobody else involved. It's just you and the music. You're not connected to anything. There's no advertisements. There's never any possibility that the experience is going to be interrupted with some like random like information that you didn't is just suddenly like popping up. There's no screen to look at. It's just an LED display, or LED or LCD. I guess it's LCD. Whatever. It's such a different experience, and I think my attention is becoming very precious to me because now I know what I need to do. And so I go on Discord this morning and I see these like scattered conversation, a great volume of conversations that are scattered everywhere. And then this morning I listened to Pink Floyd's Amagama, which is like early experimental Pink Floyd, also on a CD. Those are the only two CDs I have right now. But I went on Discord and saw all these scattered conversations, and it's like I can't even follow this. And so I said something like, "Guys, I'm probably not going to read this. I probably just FYI, like I'm not going to respond to it." I did look in the forum and read some posts on there, which is much easier to digest because the information is all in. The conversations are all sorted like that. And I won't do forums on Discord. I know Discord has a forum feature. I won't use it because we have no guarantee that our Discord server won't be pulled at any time. I mean, if it is for any reason, I have absolutely no recourse. I don't think it's likely, but still. And also, like, everything on the forum, it helps with SEO. And Discord does not, so that hurts us, actually. Helps Discord, I guess. So Discord is hard to read. I much prefer the forum. And it's just going to get worse in the future as more and more people come in. Like if I'm really based on what I'm seeing, like I think our sales are going to go up substantially, like a lot. And if that happens, the Discord activity is also going to go up substantially, a lot, like a lot. And so it's going to become impossible to follow. I kind of think the internet in general is causing like massive changes to human psychology and like problems with the way people perceive the world. Like anytime I have to post something on Twitter, I try not to even look at it as I'm posting because every single thing is like something to be outraged about. It's like, who was in the wrong here? I can't believe they did this. Some like person acting like a jerk or something that was probably even like set up and it's just a completely fake situation and just set up to generate outrage. It's like new trend where men are doing this. I can't believe this. And it's just like, no, that's not, nobody's doing that. Your job is to come up with things to be outraged about. And so you're making shit up so that I'm supposed to get upset about and agitated about. And it's like, So, you know, social media is more obvious, but it's kind of like everything on the internet is kind of like that. So, you know, and like YouTube, it's like you don't have the thing you're looking at. You have that plus a ton of information all over the screen, plus, you know, the experience can be interrupted at any time. You know, either because it's like, are you still watching, or which that in general just kind of makes you agitated because knowing that it can pop up at any moment. I think over a long period of time that does have an effect on you. And then, you know, the fact that like the advertisements pop up and it's like suddenly anyone can insert any thoughts they want into your head, whether you like it or not. And it's just like, yeah, I don't really like being connected to this Borg uh, hive mind, this Borg collective. I don't really like it. Um, so I'm gonna buy more CDs in the future, and I from now on I think I just want to listen to music on CDs. I might even get like a little Discman, just because even if it's being streamed, it's still, I don't know. It's still, you're still like connected to this, like it's kind of like the Stalker noosphere. The Earth's, you know, it's this theoretical thing in the Stalker series, but it's the Earth's, the noosphere is the Earth's informational field. And when you're connected to it, it's like, it's kind of like squeezing out your consciousness almost. Um, I don't know. Like, yeah, this is very abstract, but I'm just trying to explain kind of a feeling I have. Um, yeah, I don't want to read articles on the internet ever again, really. I don't want to read anything on the internet ever again. I just want to read physical books. I want to go to a bookstore and buy a book and read it, and go to a record store and buy a CD and take it home and put it in a CD player. I don't want to. I don't want to ever stream anything again. Um, just because I don't know. I think like, I think it has a very negative effect that's hard to perceive. It's like in small. At first, it's hard to perceive, but then over time, like it becomes more and more apparent. And I want to focus on like the thing. I know now like what I need to focus on, what I need to get done. Um, I also, you know, I also want to work more strict hours, like, you know, 9 to 5, 5 days a week, and not, you know, and just stick to that strict schedule, and just try to get as much done during that time as possible. And then when I'm off, I'm off. I'm not sure yet about the weekend meetings because I don't know any other time that people would be able to meet. I'm expecting to go back to Warsaw, you know, once after this is done. In which case, these meetings would be in the evenings, probably early evenings. So I'm not sure yet what I'll do with that, but I do want to stick to a very strict work schedule because I know now like exactly what needs to be done, and I just want to focus on that. And then when I'm not working, I want to not think about work. I not want to not think about uh, anything related to the internet at all. I don't even really want to be part of the tech industry aside from what I do. I don't like hearing about the tech industry. I don't like hearing about, you know, these stupid trends and um, hearing people's stupid opinions. You know, that they're, because they have some YouTube channel and, you know, their job is to come up with things that are sort of interesting but not too interesting. Um, yeah, I don't really care about technology outside of what I'm doing, and outside of work, I don't really care about technology at all. Um, so yeah, that's kind of like, that's kind of where I'm at right now. Um, I feel like once I really realized that, hey, this is probably going to work, um, it's like the conclusion of this idea that I set out on like years ago, of the new engine, and also the conclusion of like, you know, the idea of Leadwerks in the very first place. Um, and you know, it's a new chapter, of course, but now it's like, it's no longer, you know, this process of discovering what to do. Now it's like I know what to do. Now it's I think I expect like, you know, the next few years things are going to be more predictable. maybe less exciting, which is okay with me. Um, I've had enough excitement. Maybe someday I'll write about. You guys have no idea about all the things that happened behind the scenes during this process. Um, I mean, I lived in multiple countries. I've met very famous people and talked with them. Um, I've seen some crazy things. Um, I left Ukraine 3 weeks before the war, before the missiles started dropping there, um, and yeah, I knew more than I'm gonna say about that situation. Maybe someday I'll write a book about it. So yeah, no more. I just want to do, just make Leadworks 5 good as possible, and hopefully without the extreme like ups and downs of like your early steps of entrepreneurship. So
Yeah, that's a lot.
let's see.
Mm.
Make it
Yeah,
easier
because
for users to write shaders. You're still going to use a shader family, and but a little bit easier, yeah.
yeah, I think Reka just going back to like instead of like writing like a whole thing, everything's just so like Levelix 4, um, it had a shader file, and your fragment, your vertex, your geometry shades were all like in one file. Um,
Oh,
you know what I mean? So it wasn't like, oh, this is the frag shader, this is this shader, this is that shader. You know what I mean? It's just like it'd be cool if, if PBR was just like in one shader or something,
uh, yeah. It's probably going to remain split across multiple files
right? I don't know.
because
I still have.
we have
That's good,
includes now, and I don't want to copy the same code in multiple places. I do think it'll simplify things a bit now,
right?
quite a bit. Um, you've got to be a masochist to try and create 3D games using integrated graphics. Well, I mean, Leadworks 4 runs fine on integrated graphics, so I I would like Leadworks 5 to be able to as well. I would like Leadworks 5 to run on Linux and Mac as well. And I'm willing to make some compromises to make that happen. I think that's something that I'm going to place a high value on. Material painting, honestly, think material painting will make Leadworks games have a more interesting look. Yeah, absolutely, I agree. I was looking
And the
for an
tessellation stuff too was a big win. It's really nice to use tessellation, not worry about
Yeah, and
sleeves
that
or
actually works. Yeah, I plan to write a. Oh, I'm not allowed to talk about that. Okay. NDA about that. Sorry. I was looking for an alternative to Unreal Engine. If I can make the same open world game but with a lower overhead cost than Unreal, I'd do that. Well, how big is your open world game? Is the question. What's your budget? How many people do you have working on the team? What's your marketing budget? Because you're gonna need one to recover all the costs that's gonna cost you. Uh, you guys, I'm sorry, you're not gonna make an open world game on your own. It's just not really possible. Does that sound like a realistic? I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but does that sound realistic to anyone?
well, you can stream in like rooms, but not like like a terrain because there was a project I was working on where we were just streaming in rooms to just avoid like loading screens and everything. I mean, that's possible with an indie budget, but like streaming like terrains and everything isn't.
How big was the total area?
It wasn't that big. The idea is like, okay, it was again, it was a puzzle game, so it's like, okay, you're okay, done with this puzzle. You walk into this room, the old puzzle's deleted, new puzzle loads in
Okay, so
seamlessly.
that's not a general purpose solution. That's a
Right.
very compartmentalized thing. You can't go back, can you? And there's very
Oh,
strict like boundaries between like what is
I
one
don't
room and what
remember.
is the
This was
next.
like 10 years ago, so
Okay. Did it ever get released?
No, no, because it went. Well, we were actually doing it on Leadwerks, and then the person wanted to use Unreal, and I got busy, and the project never went anywhere. So
Hmm. Yeah,
I
yeah, what you're describing sounds like a very restricted thing, which is what you need to. I mean, you didn't have like both. You didn't have something going on one side of the world and something going on the other side of the world at the same
no,
time,
no,
did you?
no, no, no,
Yeah,
no.
that's what I mean.
We just wanted to remove loading screens.
Right. Yeah, that's not exactly. Yeah. Somebody else was
I
gonna say.
Oh yeah, I just feel like open world games are kind of like MMOs, and every new developer wants to make one, but they don't realize how much like the total content you need to make it feel like full.
Yeah. What's an EDF? What does EDF stand for?
But did I say EDF?
He says I was aiming for more semi-open like
Oh,
EDF games. Earth Defense Force. I'll take a look at it later and see if I think it's see what I think of it.
what's the max terrain size, like current max size? Because that might help them a little bit.
I think it might be. I think it's 8192 maybe. It's either 4096 or 8192.
Okay, like how big can the maps be and not lose precision?
I'd say it probably if I yeah probably about 4 kilometers from the origin, maybe more like 6 or 7. But if you go out
Okay.
further than that, you start to see like the vertices start jittering because their positions, like the floating point precision, can't support their their positions.
Mhm.
Yep.
I have a question about going to deferred and optimizing or streamlining the backend systems. How much of a fidelity and performance cost will all that happen to do? I'm more worried about deferred because I really, really like glass in Level 5 right now,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't want that to be compromised going full deferred, nor do I want the GPU overhead um, with the deferred renderer with the post effects, because post effects on Level 4 still run like crap, even like on a modern system.
I think that okay. As far as transparency goes, the way I would do it is I would make transparency in a. I would render the deferred pass first, and then I would render all the transparent objects, and I would do that with forward lighting, and I would make it real simple. Like for each transparent object, it can have up to 4 lights that affect it. Just really really dumb, and just render them one at a time, which is what you have to do anyways for the alpha blending. Um, so the transparency should still work fine. Like multiple layers of lit transparency should still be fine.
Okay. Will
As
there still be
far
like
as
blend modes? I'm
what?
sorry, you can continue. Will there still be blend modes like in Levels 4? Those blend solid, blend alpha, and you have to keep
No, because
swapping the blend.
blending is extremely complicated. What I actually
Okay.
do is I render all of the transparent objects into a separate texture, and then I draw that texture on top of the scene with blending. And that's the only way to do refraction properly. Because if you don't do it that
Okay.
way, then you can't do things like heat haze, because the like you have to get the final normals for refraction and then apply refraction. You cannot apply refraction at each step of the way.
Okay.
So yeah, I've gotten very restricted with the blend modes because, and that's important. You should still be able to achieve anything you want, just with the emission texture and such. But yeah, the blending is very very sensitive. That has to be handled very carefully.
Okay. And I'm sorry to interrupt you, but you were going over the post effects and the bottlenecks of a deferred render.
I think I think in simpler situations, clustered forward plus is faster. I think in more demanding situations with more lights in the foreground, deferred is probably faster. I think in situations where vertex counts are very high, then deferred is going to be faster because um, you don't have to have that early Z pass, so you don't have to run all those. You don't have to render all those vertices twice. Um, Post processing effects are they work exactly the same, so there's no change there. Um, and another interesting thing, this actually came up in two different places last week. I saw like both Game from Scratch on Twitter and Eric Langle on LinkedIn. They were both talking about this that um, uh, fewer than 5%, less than 5% of users on Steam have 4K screens. 1920 by 1080 is the vast majority. Like it's something like 4 point something percent of users on Steam have 4K screens, and that number is actually decreasing. Like the number is going down in the last Steam hardware survey. So that's kind of interesting. So how much importance should we give to thinking about that? Probably not that much. If we just want to be practical and put our effort where it's going to have the most benefit.
Right. I mean, I personally don't get a 4K screen because I know how much of a cost that is on games. I mean, so
Well, I mean,
I'm
Yeah,
you can
like
still set
even
it
a
to 1920.
4090 can't really do like 4K gaming at a decent speed.
I think the idea is like you use it. It is kind of nice for windowed applications because it just makes text appear more crisp. Um, in games, you can't really see it very well, and I
I
think
like 1440.
mm,
That looks really good for games because it's a little more crisper than 1080.
yeah,
But your graphics card can handle it a lot better than a 4K monitor.
yeah, for sure. Um, yeah, I think a lot of people like just set the game's resolution to 1080p if they even if they have a 4K screen. I know I certainly do that because there's not really any benefit otherwise. I have the 4K screen because uh, I needed it for display to test display scaling, and I wanted and I just want that gave me a good excuse to buy it because it was something new. But actually,
Yeah.
I have had I had at one point I had an iMac that was like a 27-inch screen that was like 2560 by 1440 or whatever it is, and that was a very nice picture. I could definitely
yeah.
tell a difference between that and 1080, but it was not that. I mean, it's not that much more pixels, maybe like 50% more or something like that. It's not 400% more.
I
It
really like
gets
the
you a
Mac monitors.
better crosshair.
Yeah,
It gets
yeah,
you a much better, clearer picture of that one dead spot. Or that
yeah.
one important spot.
As a consumer, I would probably buy like a yeah. That's probably what I would buy if I was just buying something for myself just to play games on. That's probably what I would get.
But a lot of the Steam gamers aren't doing it for like professional reasons. They just got like a regular computer that they want to game on.
Yeah.
Or they got a good gaming computer, but it's for gaming rather than building apps or games.
Um, so also to go back in the performance, since it sounds like the third will be an actual faster, or I guess more performance increased on
In some
on
situations, probably. In
yeah,
some situations.
but
In
in
other
most
situations, probably not.
right, like, do you think more users are going to be seeing the benefits of deferred render than not?
I don't think anyone will even notice.
Okay, and what about the
It'll just make my life simpler and it'll lead to fewer bug reports in the future.
okay, now how what are the ramifications of simplifying the thread structure?
I think that like I would like to eliminate the culling thread. That would get rid of the delay that can happen. When sometimes when a light will move, it'll be like out of sync for like one frame. Sometimes you can see that, not always, but so there would no longer be that delay. So it would eliminate that, and Some of the extreme like stress tests where you're getting like 6,000 frames per second would undoubtedly run slower, and I don't really care.
right? But the culling will be faster because you were talking about doing those calculations on the CPU with very efficient C++.
Well, right now they're no
So
cost. They're being done in a the algorithms they're using now are not as efficient. They're a lot. It's a lot. So it is a lot slower, but it's also running on a separate thread, so it doesn't matter if it's slower.
right,
What I'm saying is if I do like really really optimized C++ code and I structure it right, I can probably fit it into the rendering thread, run it right at the beginning of rendering, and not really have any perceptible impact on the game. Still have it like close enough. It won't be zero cost, but it'll be, maybe a heavy scene will take like might take 3 or 4 milliseconds to process at most if it's a really really heavy scene with tens of thousands of objects. But that scene is also going to take 3 or 4 milliseconds at least to render on the GPU, even if it's running at high frame rate. I mean, you have a buffer of at least 16 milliseconds if you're running at 60 frames per second, and until your rendering thread starts hitting, as long as you're just trying to render at 60 frames per second. If your rendering thread is not taking more than that, then you're not going to see any impact performance at all because those two things are happening at the same time on the GPU and on the CPU. It's like the rendering
okay,
thread just has to keep up with the GPU.
okay. I just don't want some of the bottlenecks of Leadwerks 4 to come back because of
Well,
you
Leadwerks 4
going
was,
back.
for the most part, it was like all single. It was all running on one thread.
Right. So that's probably why, like, things, you had,
Everything you added to it would have an impact on the frame rate. Yes.
even like the culling and, you couldn't either write a custom glass shader. I had to, like, the decals, I couldn't, the blending of decals wasn't as good as it is now. Like, I just don't want that go away because I really like that.
No, I don't like from the user's perspective as far as like the usage of it and the API and the results they see. I don't think anyone will even see any. I don't think anyone will even know anything changed. That's why I'm going into so much detail, like explaining this, because like it's going to be, a new update is going to come out, and I'm going to tell you guys, hey, I replaced this internal system with something simpler, and nobody's really going to perceive. That's why I can't do it. I can't. I would like to do this all immediately, but if that means that I spend 6 months on it and nobody sees any changes, then from the user's perspective, it's going to be like I didn't do anything. So that's more like what I'm expecting. I don't think anybody's ever going to notice unless I explain in great detail what I'm doing and why it's beneficial.
Right. So the only thing that's really going to change is like custom shader code.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. No, I think this is a good structure. You're pretty much just doing what I wanted. You're just making Leadworks 4, but better.
On crack.
Oh, yeah, well, like it has better, it has more tools, it has extensions.
I think we've done a pretty good job of like figuring out like what is important and what is not really so important from a practical standpoint. And that was extremely hard to figure out, at the beginning of this, especially when, respectfully, like you guys have no idea what you want. I mean, the things I hear are absolutely crazy. Like
Well,
people ask for everything under the sun.
you know
And
me, like, me, I was happy with Source. I just want the same tools as I had in that environment in here. Um, and that's mostly on the editor side, but I'm kind of happy, with what I had. I was happy with Leadworks 4, besides the tools. I wish I had the Vertex tool. I wish I had the tools that the 5 has now.
I just
And
need
the only thing
dynamic tessellated hair, bro. Just one more feature, bro. Give me dynamic tessellated hair. Oh yeah, the feature requests like change like week to week, like every like Every week it's like something new is suddenly the most important thing ever. Um,
No,
but
no,
I
but
think
you
we've
could.
figured out what's important.
Yeah.
Going forward, like the features that I'll tell you right now, like the things I definitely want to do, like as soon as possible, is like the indirect light mapping for probably start by just doing that, applying that to level geometry. But like a light map that only contains the indirect lighting component, and still use the shadow map for the direct lighting, so that something walks through the room or something, it'll still have a shadow cast on it. But that would give a higher fidelity indirect lighting for static surfaces. Vehicle physics, I really want to do. I want to free up some of the restrictions on the level geometry so that you can. Is Kent here? He's always asking about that.
Oh
Um,
yeah, we can. He
so
get his displacement tool.
yeah, I want to free up some of the restrictions so that like you can have level geometry that doesn't have to be a convex hull. It won't be able to participate in constructive solid geometry routines like Boolean operations, but it's still super useful. Um, what else? Vertex morph animations. Yeah, I mean, off the top of my head, those are like the things that the most important things I can think of that come to mind. Probably in that
What about,
order.
what about more flexibility with the flow graph editor for arguments and
Yeah, that would be
everything?
having adding arguments to the flow graph editor and just values that you can drag to supply to those arguments, or maybe it's just a value that you fill in. Um, yeah, actually, I would probably do that. Just type in the value, like something like that, like a little bit more flexibility with the flow graph editor. I don't want to go like full visual scripting because I don't think visual scripting
No,
works,
no, it's
but
no, it's the arguments and having and I want to be able to make a contraption, save it as a prefab, and have all those connections just pop into the map.
yeah, yeah. Tools for cinematics. Oh, I mean, do you have the resources to actually do that? To actually, what would you be able to do with that?
I think he wants source filmmaker.
Yeah, I'll say yes to that as long as I'm making so much money at that point that somebody else is that I've hired somebody else to write it
I think I
because I
think
don't
I
want to
think
work on it.
someone yeah, I think that should just be like its own app if it were to exist.
Probably. And what I think is really really important is video tutorials and um, game templates, and I think that's the stuff that doesn't get talked about because
Mhm.
the people who really need that. Let me pause this preview. Why did you turn off my window? Okay. To save my resources. Okay. Thank you, Discord. I am glad you have chosen for me. Um, the stuff, the game templates and video tutorials, I think are actually like the top thing that 95% of users need. But unfortunately, like those people tend to be reluctant to talk about to. They don't want to appear foolish. They're the quietest ones. Um, I mean, the people who come and hang out with me on Discord on the weekends, those people tend to be a little bit more on the expert side. Um, but yeah, I think the video tutorials and game templates. It's kind of like the video tutorial is that I haven't really delivered the value of what the product is until I have a video tutorial explaining it. Because
I
that's how
think I
the
think yeah, I think you should do at least one before release.
yeah, and like that's what. Well, I've got a whole series I've been working on that talk about how to use the editor. It's called the Crash Course series, but it's
Yeah.
kind of like the software itself. It's almost like not literally, but one way to think of it is the video is actually the product, and the software itself is just there to support the video. That's kind of a
Right.
good way of thinking of it because that's where the actual value to the end user is delivered.
Right. How to get them off of the Stockholm syndrome from the previous engine.
Well, I mean, I think a large number of people are coming in with no previous engine, no
right?
no previous experience, and that's great. I love those people, and I want to just kind of transfer my knowledge to them in a step by step manner. Um,
Mhm. Do you is C sharp still on the important list, or do you
that's a good
think
question.
since,
Is it
since
important?
right, because since now you're going to like first comers kind of thing, Lewis obviously the best choice because it's a stupid simple language to learn, and then and then when they mature or grow, they can link they can use Soul to do link that Lua code to their C++ application and all that crazy stuff,
Yeah, I don't
which
know. I
I've
think
been
that's something we can't really know right now, and that's just something that's going to develop in the future. Right now, I'd say like C sharp support is probably not that big of a priority with like
right,
who's actually is using the software.
right. I mean, to be honest, I was actually like thinking about it. It's like I really think the editor more is actually more user friendly if you're on the Lewis side of things. But there are certain things where you're going to need C++, meaning for the physics and such, and things that are not documented or not exposed, that you're going to need C++ to do. So it might just be better for the end user. I know you tell people not to do this, but it might be just better to tell the end user, hey, you might want to just make object classes, expose them in Lua, and then for your C++, in your Lua stuff, you just call your C++ classes and have the object class do a very complicated thing so you can enjoy the experience with the editor experience of using Lua.
Hmm. I probably wouldn't recommend mixing the two languages, honestly.
I mean, it has its quirks. It has its quirks, you get the best of both worlds. But you really have to like really think and plan everything and actually think things out.
I mean, what name an example of somebody of like something that can be done that has to be done in C++. plus plus?
Uh, um,
I mean, if you're
think
making
so.
like Left 4 Dead, then yeah, you need C++ plus plus for that.
Well, there's this. Well, like the pickup system we were working on with the X1 project that uses functions that are not documented in the Learn tab.
Really?
So I don't know. I don't think so. Like there was a lot of tricky things we did there. Like we created a dummy and everything. And I would rather just have
Hmm.
that just be on C++ side and then just make like a grab controller and it's like, oh, if you just want your player to pick some dummy, you just call this class and it'll handle all of that for you. So you don't like make a typo somewhere and it crashes on you.
No, I think that code belongs in a component. That's exactly the
Maybe.
kind of thing that belongs in a component, and that can be written in any language.
Maybe.
I mean,
I don't
that's
know.
what we have the component system for, is for that specific kind of stuff.
Right. Right. I don't know. I just like ideas and just I don't know.
Any
But yeah,
questions? Okay, well, thank you for joining us in a very interesting session. We had some technology discussion, a little bit of philosophy. Um, yeah, it looks, it looks like things are looking good. So I'll see
but
you
no.
guys on the forum.
Yep.
And always remember to keep developing.